All right, welcome back everyone to this Betabreak. This time we are joined by Margo Chiong, the winner of the LIC Gotham, movement and LIC Gotham Citizens Comp. Winner, she crushed it. So really excited to have her on. Took us a little bit of time to get her on. But we're gonna spend some time and chat about her journey to the podium of this comp. So, of course, with Tyler, and Margo. So, welcome, Margo. How are we doing?
Pretty good. I'm excited.
Yeah, excited. Are you tired? I know you've been like all over the place, flying and traveling and Salt Lake to, we'll get into a little bit later. Finally caught up with you, which is great.
Feeling pretty good, a little tired. Got a good
Yeah.
night's sleep.
Yeah, you feel a little kick in.
It's a very busy schedule.
Yes, it's a super busy schedule. I'm just glad we were able to finally get together. So for those of us who don't know Margo, how about you just give us a little introduction to yourself, a little about yourself, how long you've been climbing and all that good stuff.
I've been climbing since I was about 6, so that's like 8 years. I started competing like 5 years ago. I'm on the Metro Rock Bushwick team. I was previously on the Vital Climbing team and the BKB QB team. I was on Steep Rock for a while. I was on CRG for a while, so I've bounced around a little bit. I've gone to nationals the past 3 years. I made it to nationals for bouldering this year. Regionals and divisionals haven't gone by yet, so I'm not sure how it's going to go for real, so I'm pretty excited. I've done a bunch of these open comps, and I've done Young Guns for Dark Horse and other of like the Gotham Citizen comps, the one that happens at Gowanus, a couple of the BBP ones. This was my third finals, my first time on the podium, my first time winning. So that was very exciting.
Go. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so my first introduction to you, I mean, I've always, seen you in a lot of the open qualifier rounds. But then I actually saw you in the finals. It was at the Gowanus comp last year, essentially up against the same exact lineup you went up against this year.
Very
-1.
similar.
I think the only difference was it was instead of Francesca, you had Savine Park, but otherwise, same gauntlet of really strong climbers, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But and then you said there was another comp that you made finals in as well. That I
Yeah, they one of the comps that they held at BBP.
okay, right, yeah, cool, yeah, and so yeah, you also, if I'm not mistaken, just got a USAC win, pretty big USAC win, if I'm not mistaken.
I won bouldering divisionals this year. That was back in I think January or February. But
Yeah, yeah, that's a big
my
deal.
third time in a row winning bouldering divisionals.
For
That's
context for people at home, our division, while we are not Colorado or California, I would say that we are equally as competitive as them. And if you can win divisionals in our area, you can do pretty well at nationals. There's there's different regions, different divisions that are maybe less competitive, but the depth of talent here in the Northeast is pretty stacked. Yeah, so well done, congratulations.
well done. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it was we'll get into your journey to the podium at LIC. But first, I know that Tyler likes to kind of just run through the comp in general, right? Or do you have any?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially when I've been traveling and I haven't been able to make it to all these comps, I just love hearing from the competitor's perspective what the competition was like. So can you take us through the qualifying round? How many boulders were there, and did you have a favorite and maybe a least favorite?
I think there were 7 climbs. There were going to be 8, but I think they took one out.
Oh, you're talking about the qualifiers.
Yeah, for the qualifier round.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there were 7 climbs. I flashed 4 of them. One was slab. I think the other 3 were sort of more overhanging, a little bit more powerful. And then one climb that I struggled on a lot was there was this dynamic sort of run across climb, so skate move. And I think at that point, I was very focused on ropes training, so I hadn't really been doing a lot of dynamic movement, so it sort of caught me a little bit off guard and took me a while to learn. I think that's where I spent the majority of my attempts. And I think that was a little bit difficult for me mentally to see a climb that I would usually be able to do. Like bouldering divisionals was just a month before, so I didn't really think that I'd gotten that out of bouldering shape, which is a little bit difficult. But I was able to relearn the move and execute the climb, which was exciting for me. Another climb was the red climb that I gave a couple of attempts on, but the first move was this dynamic. You had to catch this edge. It was okay. It was a little bit in cut, but not very. It got kind of greasy as the comp went on. And because it was at the end, I think I just didn't really have the energy. And I knew that I'd done well, so I didn't try it as much as I think I could have. Only a couple people got the zone. I think maybe only Sienna, Jojo, and Sav had gotten anything on the climb, so I wasn't too worried about that one. And the other one that took me a couple of attempts, there was this blue climb. It started with a knee bar, sort of went through where the last climb for finals was, so went up around the edge. I think I struggle with knee bars a little bit just because it's not really something that you see as much in commercial climbing gyms. That's not really something that they can set for just a regular member. But it was interesting to be able to work through the beta and learn that move in a comp setting.
Nice. Yeah, and that red climb, for context, that was a shared climb between both male and female, right? So that was, I think, probably the hardest one for the female. And actually, there was a couple of, quite a few people who didn't get even zone on that. It was a pretty stiff climb. And I think that's where everyone kind of spent a lot of time towards the end. That was like the climb to get towards the end. But ultimately, everyone was just like, eh. It was like a consensus, like, we don't need it. I don't, zone is fine, and we don't need any more than that. So very cool. Yeah.
So to derail us a little bit already, the one thing I think would be interesting for people to hear is the difference in competing in ropes versus boulders. And as somebody who can go from winning boulder divisionals to feeling a little bit rusty on the run across move, I think a lot of people at home don't. Most adults don't compete on ropes. It just doesn't happen outside of USAC, really. So can you, for people who don't know what it's like to train and compete at such a high level, can you give them a rundown of what it feels like to be in maybe boulder shape versus rope shape, or what feels different in that moment for you?
So I think the biggest difference is for bouldering, you don't really need to have as much power endurance, or at least in the same way, because it does get tiring trying for 4 minutes 4 different times, because the rest you get is very minimal. But I think on ropes, it's just very different because you have to be climbing for 4 or 5 minutes straight. During bouldering season, I'm not really thinking about my endurance, and then during rope season, I'm not really thinking about compy movement in the same way. Like, I'm not training for dynos and run acrosses, because while they might come across at the highest level, like nationals, finals at nationals, adult comps, they're not really set for just the QEs, especially on lead when you're in U17 / Youth B, because it's the first year that you're competing on lead, so they don't really want to put anything that'll test the comfortability of the climbers too much. And I used to climb at Vital, which is a bouldering only gym, so this is the first season where I've really experienced not being in bouldering shape, because before I was still training on boulders all throughout lead season. So at practices, even though there are boulders at Metro Rock, we've only been climbing on the ropes walls for the majority of practice. And I think that there definitely is crossover. Like, bouldering was created so that people could train for outdoor lead walls. So in my experience, I think it's easier to get into ropes and lead shape sometimes than back into bouldering shape, just because there's so much crossover, like the strength that you need, just the ability to try a bunch of hard moves in succession carries over pretty easily from bouldering to lead. And endurance is sort of one of those things that you just have to do to get better at. And as long as you are consistently trying to do 4x4s and up downs and triples or doubles on lead climbs, you can get better. But movement just something for me personally, whenever I'm trying a new movement like a lache or a skate move, I sort of just have to break it down, and it can take me multiple sessions to actually learn how to do a new kind of movement. So I think that was difficult to try and execute just within that 3 hour time slot again. But I think I have at this point relearned how to do those kinds of moves that I was able to do it in time.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's been this big push to kind of be peaked for every style at once in the last few years since they combined the Youth Nationals events. For people at home, it used to be Boulder Nationals in the winter and Rope Nationals in the spring or the summer, and now it's both at once in the summer. And it's been really interesting watching people adapt based on the Olympic format to the combined week where everybody needs to do speed, lead, speed, and boulder if you do all three. And to try to peak for all of those is a lot of work for kids that also have school and lives. It's a lot. So, yeah, good work keeping what coordination you're able to keep. Do you? I don't think that you were ever able to compete when it was separated, but would you be interested in separating the nationals experience into just boulders and just ropes again?
I think it would definitely be a lot different. I think I'd be a much less well-rounded climber just because I wouldn't be able to sort of use my strengths from being in lead shape and being in bouldering shape to apply them to both disciplines. Um, I think it might be a little bit easier scheduling wise just because I wouldn't have to take up this giant chunk of my summer just to go to nationals. But now that they've actually moved nationals a lot earlier, I think that it has less of an impact on the amount of rest I'm able to take off and whether I'm able to go on a trip just with my family for recreational purposes.
Yeah,
But
sounds really nice to actually get
yeah,
some rest this summer, right? Yeah,
but
awesome.
I think it'd just be very different. It would take a lot of getting used to.
Yeah, so because you've been on the grind, right? You head down, training hard to get to where you currently are right now. So yeah,
Rest is earned. It's well deserved. Hope you get some. So switching modes back into LIC. So qualifier round went well. I believe. Did you qualify in fifth?
Fourth
Yeah.
or fifth.
Uh,
I think it was.
yeah. I think it was fifth. I wasn't there. What do I know? But going into finals, so it was almost the exact same field you competed against at Gowanus. The ISO can be a great point of camaraderie. How are you feeling going into ISO, going into finals round? Now that it was number 3, were nerves a factor for you, or is it a pretty comfortable experience at this point?
I think just based off of experience in the youth circuit and then also this being my third time being in a finals, I think I've gained a lot of confidence and comfortability going into ISO, and my mental game has been the biggest thing I've been working on all season. So I think that was a major difference. And then also, as the year has passed, I've come into contact with Sab and JoJo and Sienna way more. So I just felt a little bit more comfortable climbing next to these people. That as a younger climber, watching them be so dominant in their categories and climbing such hard grades at the gym, just like I used to sort of look up to them in a way, but I think just being able to interact with them more and seeing, oh, they're just people who have worked really, really hard and love climbing as much as you do. So there's nothing really to be scared of. I mean, I obviously respect everyone who was there and how much work they've put in and how strong they all have grown as like time has gone on. But I think just personally, the my biggest roadblock has less been learning how to do climbing physically and more just how to react to frustration and dealing with not doing as well as I would have liked to.
Yeah.
So as sorry, during this season I've been focusing on just being a lot more positive and less self-detrimental and saying things that lift myself up as opposed to focusing on things that didn't go as well as I wanted to.
Yeah, and I know we didn't call this out, but most of the viewers probably look at you and say, "Oh, she's young," but uh, Margo is 14 years old right now. So she's very young and very well spoken for someone of her age. And And then so we're talking about at least a 3-year age gap between you and maybe the youngest other finalist?
Francesca is in my category, but I think she's a year older than me. So.
A year older.
But other than that, Sav, Jojo, and Sienna are all 2 or 3 years older.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's very intimidating, coming in at such a young age and performing, right? It's, nerves all over the place. And then, the one thing I really enjoyed, and I don't know if you, unfortunately, the chat from the comp got erased, from the live stream got erased because we had to deal with audio issues or whatever from YouTube. But I was commenting after the first climb, I was like, Margo was bringing the fire, and I would love, you to get into it, but it was a very, very different Margo. And, you spoke about your mental game, and that was something I've always noticed in between, like when I first got introduced to you at Gowanus, and then now, of course, I have an eye out for, people and see where they're doing. And you can see frustration, like a lot of frustration in a lot of the qualifiers that, you would, obviously, since you've been working with and been dealing with. And clearly it's paying off because a lot of people don't understand this, and especially because climbing is a solo sport, right? I mean, it's you and the wall. Yeah, you are competing against other people, but no matter what they do, I mean, really, it's you versus the climbs. And if you get in your own head, you're done. You're done for. It doesn't really matter how good or bad everyone else does. And so it's really cool to hear that you focus on the mental game and clearly are reaping the rewards of some good work on that. But not to drag that along, let's get into the actual finals and talk about just starting from climb one and then where you were with that and moving through that.
Okay. So when it comes to finals and these kinds of comps, like, because ISO isn't that far from where the actual climbers are climbing, you can hear everything that's going on. You can hear the crowd, the kind of commentary that the MC is doing. You can sort of sometimes hear when they're falling. I try not to focus on that personally because I find that whenever I'm just focusing on myself and climbing to the best of my ability and having fun, that's when I'm really able to sort of just climb my best. So I was able to hear. I think Cleo went before me. I was able to hear how she was doing. I heard we talked about it during the route reading period, like the preview period, that climb was going to be tricky and hard. So I was trying to prepare my best in ISO. There was a moon board, which was pretty good for warming up on the small crimps and sort of the crossing moves. So I went out there. We had 3 different ideas of how the climb could go. There was the feet first, there was the hand heel match that I did, and there's something else. I don't recall what it was. But I wasn't as drawn to the feet first beta because usually in competitions one, I'm less comfortable I'm more comfortable doing the climb the way that most climbs are done. And 2, usually when it's supposed to be feet first, there's more of an indication, like there's rubber on the hold, there's some sort of foot chip that's going the wrong way. So yeah, I took my first couple of attempts just trying to work out how to get to the zone. It was, I think, I had a foot slip, which messed me up a little bit, sort of messed up the timing that I had going into the 4 minutes, because with all the practice that I've had from the circuit doing mock comps and previous finals that I've done for both Young Guns categories and Open categories, I think I have my routine very timed out. I take 15 to 30 seconds brushing and sequencing, going back over it. I don't usually have a preview period, which was a little bit different, so I spent a little bit less time on that. And then I try to pay a lot of attention to the clock to see how much time my attempts are taking me and how long I think I'm going to need to rest. So after a couple tries, I finally stuck the zone with not that much time left. So I knew that I wasn't going to get another good try just because of how physical and how tiring the climb was and how much skin it was taking off of my fingers. So I got to the zone, and then the next move, you have to pull on these 2 sort of undercling crimps really hard to try and get your foot up. And I think I was tired. It was very dark and very hot. But something sort of clicked for me, and I just had this thought, like, you're here, you should try 100%, just as hard as you can to get this first climb, because you're not getting another go. If you're ever This is the finals of an open round. Like, obviously there's money on the line, but mostly for me it's just building my confidence in these kinds of situations. So I just sort of thought, like, what if you just tried as hard as you can? And I knew that the climb was something that I could do. The last move was a dyno that I'd done a million times before. So I was just trying to focus on the fact that this is within the realm of possibility for me. And I just have to show myself that I want it, and I have to show the climb that I am going to do it. So I just pulled as hard as I could, and I was able to get my foot up. And after struggling on that move for at least 10 to 20 seconds, I knew I was not going to drop the top, because that's happened to me in countless rounds, and I know how terrible I feel after I do that, just knowing I could have done it. So I just jumped to the hold, and I pulled as hard as I could, and I stuck it. And it was sort of it was a very good feeling, a very sort of euphoric feeling.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see, like, the sequence that you did. The attempts to the top was very efficient, getting to the crux, just kind of wrestling the two opposing cribs, and your choice to go left was different than most of the other climbers who kept choosing to go right first, and then couldn't get the left on because they were just out of position. But I think even Sienna did try the left. It was almost mirroring you, but you also made the option to take that heel off the big dish and kick it out to one of the previous dishes that kind of opened you up to allow you to get that right on, and then struggle up and then get the dyno. But made some really good decisions, super efficient, through that attempt, and you got that top. And you could see it's still very stoic. You weren't happy yet. You were still in serious mode, which is really cool to see. And then coming down, and I believe you were one of two tops. It was you and JoJo at that point.
Yes.
Yes, everyone else zoned, but no one else got the top as well on that. So you were already in good company at the top and in good position. And you were aware of that? Like, I mean, listening to the crowd, you can probably hear and tell who's getting their tops at that point.
I knew that I took pretty much the entire 4 minutes to do the climb. And I think JoJo got it relatively quickly, but I think I heard the crowd sort of cheer super duper loudly in the middle of the 4 minutes. So I knew that she topped it. I wasn't exactly sure about the other people. But again, in like my first finals round, I think I sort of overanalyzed that a little bit and got in my head just trying to figure out all these calculations instead of focusing on just the next climb and what I was going to do for the next climb. So I think for this round, I just sort of tried to enjoy myself. It's like, oh, I tried really hard during that round and I did a good job of learning the movement and then executing my beta really well. So I just tried to focus on my.
Doesn't matter what they got, right? And it doesn't matter what everyone else does. If I don't get the top, I don't get the top. But if you top everything and everyone does whatever and less amount, then you did the best you could, and they did the best they could, and made the best winner win, right? Whoever, and that's a great way to approach it. I'm sure Tyler's got a much better description of that as a coach, but essentially,
Sure.
just
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever won a comp because they did the math of what people out on the floor were doing based on crowd noise. I don't think that ever, like, I think it's thrown a lot of people off and like had them lose their focus. But yeah, staying present and just trying to like enjoy and learn movement and take advantage of a cool opportunity to try hard in finals. Yeah, great headspace to be in, I think.
Awesome. Yeah.
So let's keep it moving. I'm loving hearing your description of it. I want to hear about Boulder number 2.
Okay, so for Boulder number 2, that climb, the beta was a little bit more clear. Like, there was this weird cross under move, but the holds were these jibs on these tiny little volumes, so they were very directional, and you sort of knew, oh, you're supposed to go left hand, right hand, next one's supposed to be left hand. So, although it was a very uncomfortable, not very conventional movement, it felt very intuitive for me, and I think that that's one of the things that I personally think is one of my strengths, is being able to climb intuitively. The first move was honestly a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, because you had to bump out left hand, but the feet weren't very good, the hands weren't very good. You sort of just had to lean in and hug around the wall. So that threw me off guard a little bit, but I was able to figure it out and get my balance. The next move was a little bit of a jump, but I saw the hold in the preview, and I saw that there was a lot of chalk on the inner part of the hold. I saw how in-cut it was, so I wasn't as worried about that. I just wanted to be able to control my swing. So I jumped over to it right hand, and I think I caught myself with the left to prevent the barn door out. And I think that hold was the zone. No, the next hold was the zone. So I was there. I shook out a little bit just to keep myself focused. Then I went up to the zone, which was this big ball hold. It was like half textured, half not textured. And I fiddled around with that for a little bit just because it was a little bit uncomfortable. I think I settled on sort of meat hooking it this way, so I was able to move farther out, because when I felt that I just sort of hugged it almost like an undercling, it kept me very locked off, which wasn't great for trying to be as efficient as possible, and it didn't give me as much reach. So then the next couple holds were the next couple holds were little crimps. So you go up left and you went up right and had to do this really uncomfortable cross under, where you're very close to the wall and you have to suck in with your heel on the zone hold, which was that giant ball thing. And actually in ISO on the moon board, we had set up a climb that had a very similar move. So I ran that a couple times before I went back out, trying not to get too tired in between just from climbing. But that felt very good to be prepared. And I think that we, as climbers, all the people in ISO used the moon board and the stuff that we had very well. So you had to let go of this right hand to be able to go out for the top. And it was a very physical move, because you're holding on just by your left hand and your right foot and just needing to pull in through your shoulder and to be able to stand up. And I think I've been working on that a lot, just being able to pull through one arm and one leg, because I find those kinds of moves a lot on boulders and lead routes in the competition circuit a lot, just being able to test your shoulder and your just overall strength in one arm. So that felt very nice to be able to see some of the benefits of my training in that. And then I went up to the top, and originally I thought that the hold was entirely not textured, because it was the slippery face facing you, and I was feeling around the hold and I couldn't find any texture. So then I got panicked a little bit again, and I was like, wait, how am I going to match this? But then I sort of flipped my hand over it and there was texture, so I was able to stand up over my foot and match. So that was so that was my flash go. And it felt really good to be able to feel so meticulous and precise on my very first go, just through a lot of visualization and route reading, which I've also worked on a lot to sort of maximize my first go, which is very important in a lot of these comps and comps in the youth circuit.
Yeah, and I think you're the only one who flashed that problem. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you're the only one who flashed that problem, which is impressive. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people had struggle on the first move, which is like that awkward, and then the crossover move, or cross under move. Those are the two cruxes of that climb, and everything else in between was very straightforward. But like a lot of people were just getting thrown off on either of those moves. So they were like super body control, really keeping yourself tight, or moving. I think it was just moving quickly to. I think you compressed your hand down on the first move to kind of stop that swing, or like hit the
I
wall.
wrapped my arm like on the wall and just tried to have as much surface area.
Yeah, and then to slow that down. And everyone else was, like opening up and just swinging off. Not everyone else, but the ones who couldn't hold it in. And so that proved to be very difficult for a lot of the competitors. And then once you got past that, it was that cross under move. And then the final move was fairly easy, as long as you trusted that there was some friction somewhere on that hold. But yeah, I mean, perfectly executed, really well executed for the flash, which is really cool. And I'm sure lots of confidence going into climb 3. But before we go on, Tyler, any questions or comments on that one?
No, I'm really just enjoying hearing the story, and I'm excited to see what the cliffs paired and I just really like the way you're breaking down boulders.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like hole
I've
by
got,
hole.
yeah, I've got questions about, like our usual comp format questions and stuff, but I want to hear about Boulder 3 first.
Yeah, that's her.
Okay, so I knew that it didn't take me very long on Boulder 2 because I flashed in. It wasn't a very long climb. I think it took me a minute and a half. So hearing that other people were struggling on it for a long time, I think also gave me a little bit of a confidence boost. But I didn't want to get like too in my head about it because again, overanalyzing doesn't lead you to climb as well. But I definitely had a lot of confidence. I was halfway through the round. I'd gotten 2 tops and 1 flash. I hadn't predicted climb 3 to be the hardest of the 4 climbs, but I think it was very physical because I had these big these giant pinches that I could barely wrap my hand around. So it started with this toe hook and a foot, or no, it started 2 holds. You had to tap your feet out, which I had a little bit of a problem with. I never fell establishing, but I think it just took a lot of my energy. Then you have to get a double toe hook on one of the hands. You move your hands up, then you come back to this undercling, sort of in the cave because this was in the most overhanging part of the gym. And you bump out. I got a heel on one of the, I think either the start hold or the second big pinch past it, and it was just a lot of compression, and being able to just hold that position took a lot of my strength. And in the preview, we thought that you'd just be able to bump up pretty easily, and I tried that I think once or twice, but it just felt too wide for me to be able to hold it comfortably. So then I started trying going 2 hands to it a little bit more dynamically with my feet swinging back, and that felt a little close. But in competition, sometimes I tend to get a little bit of tunnel vision just trying one thing for too long. So I tried to do a bunch of different things. I never tried the feet first beta, which I think Sienna did.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I think I'm just less drawn to that than some of the other climbers. But I wasted a little bit of energy trying a lot of different methods because I think it's a hard balance between being able to trust yourself and trust your gut with what you think you're going to need to do, and trying different things so you don't get tunnel vision or stuck in one particular beta. But in the end, I went back to trying just so I'm right hand on a big pinch, left hand on the underplaying with a heel, and going 2 hands to the next one. So I tried that 2 times, and then I think, since this was a 4 minutes plus, which I'm not as used to, so I had a little bit of trouble with that timing. But in the end, I think I rested a little bit and got on with like 5 seconds left. So I knew that would be my last attempt, so I just tried as hard as I could. And I was able to pull in a little bit more and engage some more of my contact strength when I hit that hold to cut the swing, and I was able to stay on. And at that point, I was completely gassed because I think I tried the climb at least 5 or 6 times. It's a very powerful and strengthy climb. But I just wanted that hole. No, that hole was the zone. The next hole was the zone, and I was able to do that move fairly easily. I think you get up a heel, then go up left or right. And by the time I got the zone, I had like no energy left. But the crowd was cheering, it was very hyped. The lights were on me, and I just sort of wanted to have fun and try as much as I could. So I went out. I ended up falling, but I think it was a very exciting experience to be able to get something when I know that I'm not going to be able to get on the wall again.
Yeah, no, that was a very burly climb. And the fact that you cycled through and after so many attempts of not getting that to actually be able to finally get that and then continue past it was, that was a pretty cool moment. Yeah, you must have had like no skin and just no energy at that point. Cause that, I mean, there was all fiberglass, super overhanging and a lot of tension. And that move was fairly explosive and low percentage. So yeah, that was pretty impressive to pull that through. I don't think, I mean, essentially you got zone multiple attempts. I think maybe JoJo and Sienna might have gotten zone, in less attempts at that point. But no one got the top on that climb. I think zone, like the next move past zone was just kind of a mystery as to how to get that and not fall off for anyone who got to that point. So you were all in the same spot essentially when you start talking about how far everyone got. But yeah, it was a very burly. I would have personally just said, you know what, it's not worth it. I need some energy and skin left for climb 4. But like, so speaking of climb 4, before we move on, Tyler, we're good. Yeah.
I'll jump in with one. I was recently talking to Bryce Viola, and he said that he wants the 4+ timer back in World Cups. I'm curious, Margo, for you, you and I think both kind of exist in this world of half USA climbing and half, or whatever percentage, but in these open format comps, and they feel very different, both in terms of like energy and how seriously people take them and the vibe. The Bryce was saying that World Cups bring back the 4+. I was thinking for finals rounds specifically. So let's say divisionals day 2 and nationals finals, kind of thing. Do you think that USAC should bring in the 4+?
I think that the 4+ is personally, it's very hard for me going from just 4 minutes strict to 4+, because there's a lot of different things to think about. The timing's very different. After my first try on a climb, I'll usually be able to exactly time out how many more attempts I'm going to take. So, like, this took me 1 minute. I need to rest for 30 seconds. After that 30 second rest, it's going to be a minute. Then it's going to have, like, 2 minutes left. Just being able to time it out like that. But I think 4+ messes that up a little bit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's very different. And I think having both 4 minute strict and 4+ would be an interesting shift, and it would be interesting to have to train for both of them. I think that 4+ is very good in these kinds of finals rounds because it builds a lot of excitement and anticipation in the crowd. But I think in practice, it can get abused a lot, which isn't as good for these big USAC events, just because of how strict the schedule is and how many climbers they need to fit in and how many sessions that there are. So I think that 4+ is an interesting concept, and it's definitely very fun to compete in. I just think that it would be hard to regulate it, especially on slab climbs where a lot of people could just sort of be standing and camping out for like a minute, 2 minutes plus. I think one of the reasons why it was originally erased is because, what is it, Margo Hayes like stayed on the wall for like an extra 4 minutes or something crazy after her climb, which is like, I don't think I'd be able to do that. But I don't know. I think there is something more interesting about it and more exciting about it, but there's also the trade-off of people being able to cheat the system and sort of just abuse it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was literally thinking about that from a so we did a Betabreak previously with Siri Sahara, and she was talking about like asking, is it 4+? And it was an interesting comment from the Rock Club, was like, if you take too long, we're going to take you off. So I was like, she called it a knockoff 4+. But then like, still like, what's the regulation on that, and how do you keep that fair? And, and even with the new World Cup just coming through, watching a lot of people get those buzzer beater tops is just as exciting as a 4+ top as well. It's just a different, and it's just a different way of kind of looking at it. And especially climbers are so small and so creative. People find rests in all the weirdest places, double knee bars and, wedging themselves slabs, I think it would be even harder to regulate at that, that world-class level.
Yeah. And I also think,
idea. Okay, go ahead.
I also think being able to complete a buzzer, like do a buzzer beater, is also another thing that you kind of have to train for. Like, I've done a little bit of practice with that. I got a buzzer beater during, I think, qualifiers and nationals last year. So the ability to hear like the seconds counting down, but still not rush and execute your beta, and being able to sort of maintain control even when you know that you don't have enough time left, that's also a skill. So it depends on what these competitions are trying to test. Like, do you want someone that's able to sort of time things out and adjust their rest accordingly, or do you want someone that's able to handle this pressure?
Yeah, it is interesting. It's a different test. And I think you're right. It would be interesting to watch how timing would adjust for people's strategy. My idea, IFSC, feel free to take this, is for finals round only, when we're down to the top 6 or 8 or 10, however is in a finals round, you get a 4+1. So if you're on the wall before the 4 minutes expires, you get 1 more minute, but you don't get 5 minutes. So if you fall off and you don't get back on, your 4 minutes is up. But if you get back on, you get 1 additional. So you have to keep moving. You don't just get to rest on the wall.
There you go.
And you can still get a buzzer beater.
4 plus 30 would be fine with that as well.
4+, like 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Depends on the boulder though, because there's those long boulders that take longer. So an additional minute, but that minute also ends if you fall still. So yeah, it's now called the Tyler format. You can take it, pay me royalties.
Tyler timing, there it is.
Yeah, Tyler timing. Margo, take us through boulder number 4.
Boulder 4 I was pretty confused on, but again, I'm pretty confident in my ability to adjust during the 4 minutes or on a climb. If it's a lead climb and I only get 1 try, just being able to trust my intuition. So for the start, originally I didn't notice it, but there's a pretty big add-on to the hold. There's a jib there for your toe, which I only felt on my 2nd try, which made it a lot easier to hold that while I went up. I think originally I went up, I don't exactly remember the climb. I think originally I went up with like my right hand or something, and that felt a little awkward because I was going to this not great hold. Maybe it was a pinch or it was facing the wrong way. So I knew that wouldn't work. So in the end, I think I just decided to skip that hold entirely and go a little bit more dynamically and go left-right to these two they're facing each other, these two triangular volumes, and just sort of hold that and pull myself up and pull through my shoulders. And I think with a lot of the strength training that I've done this year, which is one of my weaknesses last year, it was also cool to think, would I have been able to do that climb last year when I maybe wasn't working out as much or doing as much strength training. So that was a very satisfying moment for me. And then for the rest of the climb, I saw that a couple people did knee bars just when I was watching that last climb after I finished. And knee bars, as I said before, are something that I just don't feel as comfortable with. When I was younger, I was a lot smaller than a lot of the other climbers, so they didn't really fit for me, and I wasn't able to just sit there and take my hands off the wall and just sort of rest there. So I don't think I've been able to practice them as much. So I was less drawn to that beta, and more so just the one that I think a lot of other people did. You just go out and then you get a high heel hand match and have to rock over to be able to pull into this big undercling. And that was another move where I sort of just had to tell myself, if you try as hard as you can, I know that you can do this move. Just sort of trying to hype myself up and be like, imagine how cool it would be if you just pulled 100% and did this move right now. So I was able to pull, and I struggled a little bit, but I was able to get my left foot up and stand up into that undercling and then bump up to the next one. At this point, I was feeling pretty confident about the top because there were those big blue flaky holds that are very in-cut and very juggy if you can hold them the right way. So I went up to the top, and I was actually a little bit confused because in that position, I didn't feel like I would be able to take off my right hand, so I fiddled around a little bit. In the end, I got a toe hook and then bumped my left hand up to where there was a little bit more of an edge so I could more meat hook it and just sort of tapped. That was very satisfying to me.
Yeah, that top was, I think, the crux of the climb. A lot of people did rest in with the knee bar, but I don't know if that was necessarily necessary. But yeah, I remember, I think JoJo actually never got that top. She could not figure out the toe hook, and it was weird. And everyone who got the top didn't just do it. It was just how does this work? And eventually kind of found the tension between the toe and the hands and a little bit of adjustment to make that work. And so that wasn't a flash attempt because you kind of just popped off.
My second go.
And then you just went. I think a lot of people opted for the more dynamic approach as well, which I thought was interesting. I was like, that's garbage. I don't want that. Let's go over here with this, which was really, really cool. But then, so with that, you ended up with 3 tops, 1 zone, and on the top of the podium, right? So that was quite. And then I saw you smile, right? Now she came up on top of that one, and we got a big smile, which is great. And and the smile wasn't necessarily, hey, I won. The smile was, I did my best, and you can see that you were very happy with your performance, and you tried your hardest, and you came off, and everything else was up to everybody else, right? And we'll see where it ends up, and that's really cool. Especially, I'm saying to you young athletes out there, just as young as Margo is, but just do you. And that's something I got to tell to a lot of climbers who come to me for questions and whatever. I'm like, just have fun. Like, just do you. Don't worry about who might have done what, where, why. How many did you? Just go ahead, get up there and have fun. Everything else is in the past. Go and have fun. And that's it, right? As long as you're enjoying yourself and you're trying your hardest, good to go. That's it. That's all the coach can ask for, right, Tyler?
Yeah. All you can ask for is somebody who's just genuinely out there to try their best and have fun. Margo, on the topic of doing your best, but on the topic of competitions, really, I'm always curious for our guests, especially people who are super entrenched in USA climbing and that format world. Is there something that you wish climbing competitions did more or better or did less? Like, if you could improve something about climbing competitions, is there anything big that stands out for you?
Not really for me. I think obviously it would be better if competition climbing was a lot more accessible to different people, because I think with like a lot of people either don't know about it, but a lot of the dues that you have to pay also go towards whether someone can go or not. Maybe better sort of advertisement of when comps are happening. But I think with the competitions themselves, I mean, I've been doing it for so long, I can't really think about it in any other way. But
You just accept it for what it is.
Yeah.
yeah. There isn't really anything. This isn't really as related to competitions as much, but I think being able to do climbs that are in a more compy style would be would sort of even the playing field, because depending on what gym you climb at, what gym is accessible to you, it depends on that can change what kind of climbs you're getting on from the day to day. So what your strengths are. So I think because like the gym where I started, Steep Rock, they obviously it's like a one wall gym. They don't have the luxury of setting for competition climbers, and I think if a lot of gyms sort of paid more attention to developing youth climbing, it would be a lot better for the youth climbing community and maybe even the adult community, because they'd get to try all these different things that you can see on television, like at the Olympics, at the World Cups. But I don't really have any notes about actual comps themselves.
For your finals ISO experience as a high level athlete who is putting on a show for the event organizers, is there anything that you wish gym organizers would give you in ISO or ways that you wish that they would support you?
I think one issue that we had at the beginning was it was very hot, and the only light that we had was this big spotlight, which also made it a little bit warmer if you were like standing in the light. So if you wanted to see anything, you sort of like, I get that you have to turn all the lights off to sort of
Make
create
the
that
show.
setting, but they didn't have a fan up there originally, which was not good for warming up because a lot of people got really overheated. I personally got kind of out of breath, so I think just making sure that the situation for ISO can give the climbers as much as possible, and I get that a lot of gyms aren't set up to do that, but they were able to move a big fan up there, and which made it a lot better. Other thing is maybe bathrooms. Like, that's just one thing that is sort of a struggle even at youth competitions. Like, porta potties are not great, and I think, me personally, I think that it's better to give the bathrooms to the climbers, because they're the ones that sort of need to be supported as opposed to the parents. I get that a lot of parents get like I think that it's more important to support the climbers in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's why everyone's there. So for sure. And actually, I think one of the things I noticed at the LIC comp in general on climbs 3 and 4, especially for the female, is that they had one clock that was in between these bright lights. And so everyone was like trying to be able to see how much time they had left. And so, more clocks, or at least a better position for the clocks where it's on a blind spot for that. I mean, I don't think that's ever, I think this was just this year they had that issue. I'm not really sure why, but yeah.
And then maybe if there's anything else, just making sure that we have brushes. Like I think on the first climb, there was a little bit of a wait because we didn't have enough brushes, that's sort of become a big part of my pre-climb routine when it comes to 4-on, 4-off formats like that.
Do you have a go-to ISO or comp snack?
A lot of water. This has improved a lot in the past year, but because I get a lot of cramps, so I need to make sure that I stay hydrated. So I drink a lot of water. There are these, I forgot who makes them. It's like Power Bar or something. Be like Bolt or Block Energy Chews. They have a little bit of caffeine. They have some sugar. There's a version that has, I think, some sodium and electrolytes that I like a lot. I think it's the watermelon flavor. I like those a lot. Um, and then also just like a juice or chocolate milk. I drink a lot of chocolate milk personally. But I think just something that is light. The thing that I like about drinks like that is sort of they fill me up a little bit if I'm hungry, and they just put something into my system that isn't just water, but they're also not going to make me feel too weird. The nice thing about this comp was actually that they had a big table that had water bottles and snacks and bars and chips and whatever anyone wanted. So I think that was really nice of LIC to provide.
Awesome. Yeah. The one other we said at the top that you had kind of a busy week. I think I'm getting this right. You went. I know that you just competed at one of the NACS comps. You were also in Salt Lake, training with a coach. I think there was one other competition that you traveled to or something. You're all over the map. Specifically the NACS Cup. I just want to hear how that experience was for you. What are the NACS Cups like, I guess, in comparison to the Citizens Comps or the USAC Comps? Do they feel different?
So, I'm not sure if you know how it was working, or the people watching this will know how it's working. But the NACS, first of all, NACS stands for North American Climbing.
I think it's Cup Series.
Cup Series. North American Cup Series. So they're to be able to qualify for nationals and team trials and to possibly get a spot on the national team. And I think I am too young to be able to compete in the adult open category. I think I will be next year or the year after that. I'm not quite sure. You have to be 16 or, yeah, I think at least 16, or it has to be the year that you're turning 16. That might be wrong. But for a couple of them this season, they created a special U17 category. So for people my age or the year above me who, even if who could compete with the adults but would rather compete with the kids, there are 3 of them. There's the one I went to, which was in Murfreesboro, and it was for lead. There was the one before, which was open to U17 also, I believe, for bouldering. And then there's one in Montreal, but that's only speed. So I'm not going to that one. But I think it felt a lot. It was obviously less stress than I have at nationals, but I think the format was very similar because the first day was flash format, so we only got 1 try on 2 climbs, but we got videos that showed the beta and we were able to see the climbs beforehand. For this comp specifically, I was trying to sort of, I think I watched the videos once or twice, but I was also trying to not watch people, which is something that I do at a lot of flash format comps, just so I'm more focusing on me and I may be able to practice some of my on-site skills for divisionals and regionals and nationals. That was a lot of fun. It was cool to be able to compete against a lot of climbers that I don't usually see, and a lot of my friends that I'm not really able to see. People from California came, people from all over the US were able to go. There weren't that many people there. I think there were only 14 people for my category and then 9 people for the male U17 category. But it was just a really cool experience to be with a completely different group of people. And it felt a lot like nationals if I was less stressed. If that makes a little bit of sense. Like I was focused, I was trying to do my best, but I wasn't really as obsessed with how I was doing.
Yeah, it's like the atmosphere and the intensity and the level of difficulty of nationals, but without the long season of qualification and the like finality of the results. And yeah, that's super cool. Um, what else is coming up for it? I mean, I know that we're about a month out from regionals. Do you have any other big trips coming up? Do you have any other big competitions besides the upcoming USAC stuff?
No, I think. Oh, well, there's regionals soon, but I'm also going to the, I think, mock regionals. It's being hosted by LIC, so I'm excited for that.
Cool.
Um, I don't. There's not much else. I recently took a lot of trips, so I went to San Diego to do a climbing camp at the Wall Climbing Gym. I think it was run by C5, that climbing team, and then so I was able to climb. That was an amazing experience. Then, yeah, I went to. So, as you were saying, I've had a pretty busy schedule for the past couple of weeks. I went to LIC for Gotham Citizen, then I went to San Diego, I went to NACS, and I went to Salt Lake for bouldering. But that's pretty much all that I have. I mean, I have school, I have finals, and then right after that, I have nationals. So,
And you were training in Salt Lake, right? You were training for bouldering. Yeah.
I was training with Alex Johnson. She coaches a couple of kids, and she's one of my coaches. So I work with her mostly online because she lives in Utah. But whenever I can, I go out and I climb with her. She coaches me in person. It's very fun.
Super cool. Yeah. We've been going for just about an hour, but Basim, do you have any other further questions?
I don't have any questions. I mean, like one thing would be really interesting is when you start talking about your training for your headspace, right? That's I think a big thing. Like, will be some advice, or I mean, if you can even share with us some of the, or maybe coaches or whatever you did to kind of get you to where you are mentally, from last year to this year. I think a lot of our listeners will be interested in that.
So I've done stuff with a lot of different people. I've done stuff with AJ, stuff with my just coaches at Metro Rock, Marcio and Dennis. I've talked to them about it. I also did some coaching with Zoe. She used to coach at Movement, but now she has her own team. I've done a lot of mental stuff with her. And I think this is my mental space for climbing has been, I think, my biggest challenge across the years that I've been competing. So it's definitely been something that takes a lot of effort and just a lot of work, and something that I have to be I try to be very intentional about at whenever I'm training or whenever I go to a comp. And I think just having a lot of confidence and trying to be less self-deprecating, it's just been the one thing that has helped me so much. Just going in, just not dwelling on the past, I think, especially in these 4 on 4 off rounds. Being able to say to myself, okay, you didn't get it that time, you're gonna flash it the next time, you're gonna get the next climb. Or even if I'm getting the climb again, now you know what you did wrong and you know what to fix and you know what to do. So now you're gonna go and you're gonna top the climb. And reframing my quote unquote failures or falling as a lesson that I can use to do the climb next time or do better. What else? I've been journaling a lot more, which I think also has helped me reflect. Like whenever I go to one of the camps like I did in San Diego, or when I was training with AJ, or after a big competition like nationals or the finals, just writing down what I think I need to work on so I know what to focus on for my next session, or what to focus on in the upcoming months leading up to my next big event. And then also being able to acknowledge what I did well and what I've improved on. Because I think sometimes when improvement takes so long, I tend to get lost in the process and just be like, oh my God, I haven't improved at all, when I'm just improving small steps across the year. Like being able to reflect, like, oh, if I was in this situation a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to stay calm. I wouldn't have been able to sort of bring myself back up and stay as confident as I was, and being able to even acknowledge small little things that happen.
I just want to point out that being able to take note of improvement in how you're feeling about how something is going, because it's very easy to find improvement in outcomes, but it takes some real searching to find the ways that you've improved over previous years in things that are harder to quantify, and especially things that are going on internally. So, and congratulations on all the hard work that you've put into that. That's really hard work to work on yourself like that for everybody. Yeah, love it.
I think that's a good note to end this wonderful data break on. Margo, thank you so much for your time. Can't wait to see you back on the wall again. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. Of course, if you enjoyed this beta break, feel free to click that like button and, of course, subscribe to keep supporting the channel as we support all these wonderful climbers out there. And yeah, thank you so much. It's really exciting. See you guys all on the next one. We'll catch you later.